Taoism and magic compete, technology and immortality blend together. Refining corpses, slaying demons, standing on the throne and overlooking the Marvel world. Keywords of the novel. Meiman Xiuxian Lu no pop-ups, Meiman Xiuxian Lu TXT complete collection download, Meiman Xiuxian Lu latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. Werewolf and Yellow Sparrow. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Werewolf and Yellow Sparrow. Federal New York Brooklyn subway station. The continuous rain made the entire city seem gloomy. At the end of the workday, the bustling commuters on the street, holding umbrellas, rushed to the entrance of the subway station in the rain. Follow them closely. In the bustling crowd, a short-haired woman wearing a tight black leather jacket with a beautiful face fixed her gaze on the two strong white men in the crowd. Two white men holding umbrellas, apart from their slightly fierce demeanor, looked like ordinary office workers. However, Selina can smell the smell from these big dogs every 200 meters. They are so familiar that they have become a blood feud between two races for hundreds or even thousands of years. Selina skillfully followed two strong white men through the crowd, occasionally gesturing to her companions behind her to follow. Pop 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 pop. It rained heavily, hitting the umbrellas of pedestrians with a crackling sound. The cold rain slid down, and the people under the umbrella wished to curl themselves up all over. These people holding umbrellas in a hurry became Selina's best cover. She occasionally obscured her figure by the figures of passers-by, staring fixedly at the target in front of her. These dirty big dogs don't hide in the sewer, how dare they openly appear on the streets of New York. The rain soaked her black hair, and Selina instinctively touched the pistol around her waist. As the most outstanding death walker of the Blood Clan in nearly a century, countless werewolves have died in her hands. Selina harbors a genuine disgust towards these dirty big dogs that have killed her parents and family. Suction. One of the two strong white men suddenly stopped, stirring his nostrils as if he had smelled something. He suddenly turned around, his gaze fixed on Selina behind him. Stinky bat. The white man, wearing a denim jacket and revealing thick chest hair, let out a furious curse and suddenly pulled out a pistol from behind, aiming at Selina and pulling the trigger directly. Bang bang bang, intense gunshots rang out, and the entire street seemed to explode. Many people threw down their umbrellas and skillfully rushed to both sides of the street to find shelter. The streets were filled with hurried and fleeing crowds. Bang bang bang. Selina leaned back and made a movement that was almost impossible for humans to complete. Her body almost pressed back against the ground, avoiding bullets, and her hands swayed flexibly around her waist. Two black Beretta F-92S pistols appeared in Selina's hand. Two clearly modified black pistols fired at a rate comparable to an automatic rifle in her hand. Two people drew their guns and fired at each other, bullets weaving through the crowd, and from time to time, unlucky ghosts were shot and fell to the ground, howling in agony. Bang 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 bang. The companion of the strong white man reacted and drew a pistol to join the battle. On the other hand, several death walkers following Selina also rushed over. The two sides engaged in a melee, with the death walker clearly occupying a numerical advantage. Bang! A silver bullet brushed against the cheek of a strong white man, leaving a finger-sized bloodstain. The bullets mixed with nitrate silver made the wound of the white strong man seem to have been splashed with strong acid, emitting white smoke with a sneer. Roar! The white man let out a painful roar, reached out to cover his cheek, and deep in his eyes, a ghostly beast-like light emanated. Bang bang bang, the strong white man emptied his magazine in one breath and awkwardly dragged his counting companions back to the side alley. Chase! Selina let out a low shout and chased straight into the alley with guns in both hands. The chaotic footsteps were not far ahead, and Selina suddenly felt a chill in her hair. She suddenly stopped walking, her figure quickly flashed, and she pressed tightly against the wall. Bang underscore, a bullet flickering purple fluorescence almost brushed against her leather jacket. Ah! Behind Selina, a death walker who had just followed her unfortunately got hit by the bullet and turned into ashes in the midst of painful cries. What is this thing? Selena could almost feel her heart beating wildly after a pause for an unknown amount of time. Faced with death, she suddenly felt a little dry-mouthed. I'll stop these stinky bats, you go notify the boss. At the corner of the alley, the strong white man looked faintly uncontrollable and immediately revealed his companion in the form of an orc. He pressed the ultraviolet bullet into the magazine while frowning and drinking. Roar! Before he could finish speaking, a thick wolf paw wrapped around his shoulder. A gray-haired werewolf standing upright for over 2 meters let out a roar, leaping over the white man and rushing towards the alley. OMG, what kind of monster is this? In the corner of the alley, under the shed made of torn cardboard boxes, a ragged homeless man looked at the magical scene before him and couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. Damn it! The strong white man looked at his accomplice who had completely turned into an orc, furrowed his brow, and shot the homeless man in the head with a backhand. Then he ran towards the depths of the alley without looking back. Bang bang bang. The dense gunfire behind him echoed, completely ignored by the white man. He covered his face with one hand and ran wildly with a gun in the other. He needed to rush back to the wolf's nest as soon as possible and notify the leader. The perfect blood is related to the leader's great cause and the rise of werewolves. It would be troublesome if those vampires were to notice it. Get lost. At the end of the alley, a figure holding a black umbrella calmly walked towards the white man. The alley is not wide, and both sides of the alley are already filled with miscellaneous items. The person walking towards them has an umbrella that almost covers most of the alley. The white man rushed over without even thinking. Bang! The white man's shoulders had just touched the person's body and he felt something was wrong, as if he had hit a steel plate. He looked up in shock and saw a pair of serene eyes under the umbrella staring at him with great interest. Just like, the butcher in the slaughterhouse is staring at a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. Werewolves are strong-bodied creatures with super self-healing abilities, and ordinary pistol bullets are useless to them. A completely beast-like werewolf is enough to slaughter an unprepared federal police force. However, for vampires who have fought against them for hundreds of years, they are well aware of the habitual weaknesses of these big dogs. Silver, just like they fear sunlight, these werewolves fear silver. Pushi. Selena's backhand sword, a silver-plated medieval two-handed sword, directly chopped off a massive wolf head. Excuse me. Selena wiped the antique knight sword in her hand and looked at the bullets handed over by her companion. The sparkling purple light inside the crystal-like bullets made her whisper uncontrollably. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Materials and experiments. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Materials and experiments. Roar. Almost stemming from innate vigilance, the white man's body instinctively began to transform upon seeing these eyes. Under his jacket, his body hair grew wildly, his limbs deformed, his hair grew, and his nails turned into sharp wolf claws. Chick. The swollen figure instantly tore apart the clothes of the white man. Good physique. It's made of good materials. The umbrella holder looked at the transformed werewolf in front of him without any fear, but instead gave a satisfied admiration. Roar. Standing upright, a werewolf with a height of 2.56 meters waved his sharp claws and grabbed towards the umbrella holder. The umbrella bearer faced the werewolf's claws, which were capable of tearing apart steel, without any fear or even moving a step. Under the black umbrella, a greenish-black light appeared, and the speed of this greenish flowing light was simply too fast, almost at the moment when the werewolf saw it. With a whoosh, this stream of light fiercely penetrated its chest. Roar. Almost instantly, the werewolf transformed by the white man felt a tingling, powerless, and sore sensation in his body. Its body seemed completely out of control, as if in an instant, it had become a vegetative being. Puff. The werewolf fell to the ground on his back, with a quaint and old bronze nail stuck in his chest and heart. The style seems to be the nails used by ancient Eastern countries to nail coffins. On the wedges of the nails, there are 4 or 5 small bird seal script runes engraved, shimmering with black light. At this moment, the wolf lying on the ground can only see the face of the umbrella holder clearly. A slender Asian youth with a cold and stern face, looking at him with a playful expression in his eyes. It's like watching a scientist in a laboratory looking at a white mouse waiting to be dissected. Cain. The Asian youth waved his hand, and at the corner of the alley, a burly German man walked out. Boss. The strong man named Cain has a lembo face that looks like a knife, axe, or chisel, with a burly figure of 1.9 meters. Standing alone, it feels like a towering mountain, full of oppression. Take this big dog back. The Asian youth rubbed the bamboo umbrella handle in his hand and instructed. The strong man Cain skillfully took out a bundle of carbon fiber special ropes that were the thickness of his thumb, and tied the werewolf lying on the ground with a sturdy knot in 3 or 2 strokes. After finishing his work, he stood up, put his thumb and index finger in his mouth, and blew a whistle towards the distance. In less than 10 seconds, a Ford pickup truck overturned into the alley. The driver was a small and muscular black man with dirty braids. The black man jumped out of the car and saluted the Asian youth. Boss. The Asian youth nodded at him. Cain, this big dog needs to be put in the dog cage first. There's no need to remove the coffin nails on its body. Yes, boss. Cain grabbed the werewolf's neck with one hand, lifting him up like a chick and throwing him into the trunk of the pickup truck. The pickup truck quickly disappeared into the rain in New York. The Asian youth, holding umbrellas, slowly walked out of the alley and joined the bustling crowd in New York. At this moment, accompanied by piercing alarm bells, several FBI police cars finally arrived at the scene. Tang, you're late. The Osborne Building, once the tallest building in New York, although its name was later replaced by the Stark Building, it is undeniable that it is still one of the landmarks of New York City. As the world's best biotech and pharmaceutical company, the Osborne Building is the dream workplace for all biological researchers, with the best equipment, the strongest biological research team, and the most generous salary. However, the entry requirements here are equally strict, and ordinary researchers must at least graduate from Ivy League universities. The Asian man known as Tang is the umbrella bearer in the alley. At this time, he is wearing a pair of black framed glasses and a plaid shirt, appearing somewhat shy. The chubby white man who greeted him, graduated from Harvard with 2 bachelor's degrees, is an alumnus and also his colleague. Hi Bob, don't mention it. Today was really unlucky. There was a shooting incident at the Brooklyn subway station, and the FBI blocked the station, causing some delay. Tang and Song changed into white coats, complaining while wearing identification cards. His name and position are on the identity card. Tang Song, an ordinary researcher at the Osborne Group. Gunfight, that rundown place in Brooklyn, white chubby Bob shrugged with an expected expression on his face. His weight approaching 300 pounds made the flesh on his cheeks tremble as he shrugged. Don, if you ask me, you should leave that haunted place. Brooklyn is too chaotic, you know, it's a hellish kitchen. The two of them changed into work clothes, and Bob whispered in Tang Song's ear. There are all these niggers and addicts there, who knows what kind of madness they will go. Don, with your salary, why not rent a house near the company? Drop. Tang and Song reached out and brushed at the entrance of the experimental center, and the bulletproof isolation door automatically slid to both sides. The matter of renting a house is not urgent, Bob. You know, I still have a student loan to pay off. When I finish paying off the loan, I will consider changing my living environment. In the clean and sterile laboratory, Tang Song organized experimental equipment and checked the condition of the experimental subjects. Student loans, this is really a hassle. Bob shrugged. Student loans are an unavoidable issue for federal college students. About half of the entire federal college graduates bear student loans, with an average debt of over $10,000. Even an unknown black president has been paying off student loans for nearly 20 years. Ding! The Tang and Song dynasties opened the cultivation equipment in the laboratory, and the transparent cultivation room was a miniature rainforest symbiotic system covering an area of 30.40 square meters. The miniature stream flows with murmurs, and the miniature shrub jungle is lush. From vegetation, temperature, humidity, this is a simulated environment of the Amazon rainforest. One of the benefits of large companies is that they have equipment that is not inferior to top laboratories. This environmental simulation system alone cost Osborne Group millions of dollars. Of course, the experiment applied to this system is not just the responsibility of Tang Song. Currently, he only has 2 weeks of usage rights. Where are those guys, those bugs? Why are they missing? Bob leaned outside the bulletproof glass, looked for the experimental subject with his probe, and tapped the glass with his fingers, feeling somewhat puzzled. Don't worry, Tang Song helped his glasses and opened the control system of this device on the computer. Scream. As the Tang and Song dynasties hit the keyboard with both hands, rainstorms suddenly poured in the simulation room. The rainstorm poured down and submerged half of the small bushes in an instant. In the bushes, a black and red centipede floated up, nearly a foot long, with densely packed sharp curved feet and ferocious mouthparts. Wherever it was placed, it was a terrifying poisonous insect. Unfortunately, this centipede floating on the water only has half of its body left, and its remains are covered in wounds. The missing remains seem to have been nibbled away by something one by one. This centipede is dead, and I bet it will live to the end. Bob, somewhat surprised, leaned over to the observation window and sighed, I bet Professor Connors $50. It seems that your $50 can't be saved. I'm curious, what is Professor Connors pressing for? Tang and Song looked up with some curiosity. According to the knowledge of his predecessors in the Tang and Song dynasties, Connors was always paranoid and stubborn, devoted to the research of cross-species genetic recombination, and became a famous research maniac. How could such a rigid person bet on Bob? Bob reached out 2-carat-thick fingers and held the potato chips in the potato bag. Obviously, for an old fried potato chip, the rule that no snacks can be eaten in the laboratory is nothing. Creak, creak, it's that spider, Bob said vaguely while eating potato chips. Professor Connors clearly has confidence in that mutant spider. Spider, Tang and Song's gaze turned to the side of the centipede, and the surging rain washed out another insect corpse. Black back with red stripes and a few furry tentacles, it was the spider that Professor Connors kindly provided. But now this spider is a bit miserable, with its originally plump belly bursting open, leaving only 3 out of 8 spider legs. Bob, it seems that your money has been saved. Tang and Song casually turned off the rainfall system and walked to the observation window. The rain seemed to completely break the tranquility in this jungle, as the Tang and Song dynasties shut down the rainfall system. In the bushes, a thick and thin chopstick, a black snake with a bulging head, spat out its snake venom and straightened its upper body, happily swaying its body, bathing in the rain that made it feel incredibly happy. Gugugwa, gugugwa. The pool behind the black snake emitted a strange frog roar, and its upper body turned around like lightning. The snake's pupils stared coldly behind it, and the letter poked out as if it would pounce in the next moment. Under the gaze of the black snake, a strange toad the size of a baby's fist slowly emerged from the water and slowly climbed onto the top of a nearby shrub. The snow-white belly sucked in a puff, and the sound of frogs echoed in waves, as if a short thunderous sound could be heard. A golden pattern behind it emerged as its belly undulated, surrounded by dense dark green lumps, one by one bulging. Faced with the black snake, the dark green bumps behind the toad vaguely had mucus surging. With a hissing sound, the black snake probed its upper body and made a dive. The sharp venomous teeth in the snake's snout faintly contained transparent mucus flowing out. Tang and Song came to the observation window of the training room, overlooking a simulated jungle of over 10 square meters from a high position. On the handsome and resolute faces of the Tang and Song dynasties, a pair of deep eyes hidden under plain glasses shone brightly. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Black Snake and Gene Recombination. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Black Snake and Gene Recombination. Hiss. The black snake spat out its message, tightly entwined with the dark green toad, and its black body kept shrinking. Poochie poochie, there was a popping sound, which was the sound of lumps bursting on the back of the dark green toad. Thick and sticky venom splattered onto the body of the black snake, corroding its finely scaled body into pits. Even the pink internal organs of the black snake could be seen through the pits. Goo goo, the bumps on the back exploded one by one, and the dark green toad was tightly entangled, with its belly weakly beating. Only 2 legs of the toad were exposed, shaking occasionally. It seems that the winner has already been decided. Tang and Song watched the 2 different insects determine the winner, but the result was not too surprising to him. This snake was a strange beast captured by animal hunters from the primitive jungle of Borneo by the Osborne group. Animal hunters refer to some hunters who wander in remote mountains and forests, hunting rare birds and exotic animals. Previously, they were wealthy officials and wealthy businessmen who purchased these rare birds and beasts for the purpose of seeking novelty and showing off. Later, with the advancement of modern biotechnology, some rare animals attracted the attention of many scientists. These animals often contain valuable wealth in their bodies, such as their genes. Just like the color-changing ability of chameleons, the regenerative ability of lizards, and the discharge ability of electric eels, they are all excellent research materials for biological research. The rarer the animals, the more popular they become. A group of animal hunters went to Borneo to search for the legendary python, only to bring back a strange black snake, which was ultimately sold by the Osborne Group for a high price of $200,000. As the world's #1 biotechnology company, Osborne Group naturally needs to conduct research in this area. With abundant wealth, Osborne has raised many animal hunters. Tang, it seems that this black snake has won this Roman competitive game. Creak, creak. Bob bit into the potato chips and said vaguely, when will the experiment start? Should we wait for this black snake to heal? No need. Tang Song turned his gaze to the black snake, looking at the riddled wounds on its body. He raised his eyebrows and said, Professor Connors needs to use this laboratory the day after tomorrow. We don't have much time left. We are conducting genetically modified experiments now. Transcription gene experiment, as the name suggests, is the process of gene transcription grafting. A Chinese professor surnamed Wu from Harvard University once recombined some fragments of frog and crocodile genes and cloned a crocodile with astonishing jumping power. It is said that Dr. Wu entered a multinational biology company as a result and became the chief researcher. According to rumors, this multinational company has been dedicated to paleontological research. Professor Connors, Bob, Tang and Song have similar research directions as Professor Wu. However, Professor Connors was interested in the limb recovery ability of lizards and attempted to integrate this ability into humans. The research direction of Tang, Song, and Bob is gene fusion between animals and the cultivation of new species with significant economic value. What kind of gene debugging should we do first, chameleon or electric eel? Otherwise, what about these lizards? These are all Professor Connors' treasures. Bob opened the door of the refrigeration room on one side and pushed out a small cart. On the reagent rack, there were rows of various colored gene reagents. It is covered with names such as king chameleon, black widow spider, Mongshan iron head, bamboo leaf green, blue ring octopus commonly seen, rare, and diverse in the market. These animals mostly possess unique skills or are among the best among their kind. Tang Song walked up to the reagent rack, turned his back to Bob, and stroked a row of reagents with his fingers. A blue light fell into that row of reagents. Try fusing the electric eel gene first. Tang and Song casually picked up a reagent and placed it in the compartment below the culture room. Tang, I hope what you said about raising goo is really effective. This is cross-species genetic recombination. Bob put down the potato chips, walked over to the computer, sat down, and moved the mouse to tap twice on the computer screen. Shushi as the spraying program in the cultivation room started, white mist was sprayed out this time. These drugs, which have a strong anesthetic effect and can stun an elephant in 3 seconds, were sprayed out, causing the body of the black snake, which was trying to devour the body of the dark green toad, to suddenly soften. Come on, little one. Bob used a computer to control the robotic arm and inserted an injection into the black snake. Tang Song stood in front of the single dot-sided glass in the training room, looking at the tense muscles beneath the seemingly soft body of the black snake, with a hint of a smile in his eyes. The intelligence of this black snake is not bad. It can fight against 100 strange insects and can also be called a strange beast. I just don't know if genetic recombination can be very useful. Tang and Song watched as the needle pierced into the body of the black snake. With the push of the genetic potion, the body of the black snake twisted wildly. The black snake's tail shook wildly, and its upper body was entangled, almost twisted into fried dough twists. The bushes in the cultivation room were crackling with the sound of its thrusts, and fine, blood-bound snake scales burst everywhere. The entire cultivation room was suddenly in chaos. For a long time, the black snake stopped struggling and floated on the water surface. Dead. Bob looked at the motionless black snake and the values displayed on the life monitoring instrument, and looked at Hanli in astonishment. Tang, this is just a joke. We spent so much time using the ancient secret technique you mentioned to cultivate goo insects, and as a result, Siate. Bob couldn't help but curse angrily. We spent millions of experimental funds without any results, we will be fired. Continue to inject, using the genes of Manshan soldering iron tip. Tang and Song had a calm expression, and their eyes under their glasses were unusually calm. Bob looked into Tang Song's eyes as if he had seen the deep pool in his hometown farm, calm, deep, and intimidating. Bob's mind was stirred and he immediately lowered his head to operate. Okay, since you want to do this, but this black snake is obviously cold through, oh. As the black snake in the training room approached the robotic arm, it instantly ejected. The snake's head tightly bit the clamp of the robotic arm, and its sharp fangs spurted transparent venom out in a sneer. Looking at the obvious corrosive spots on the alloy robotic arm, Bob was so scared that he swallowed his saliva and let out a scream. Shit! This snake pretends to be dead. Bob's face was pale, and cold sweat flowed down his forehead in an instant. Just now, he saw that the black snake had no vitality, and he wanted to clip it out and deal with it. Fortunately, I didn't do this. If someone didn't pay attention to being bitten by this snake, judging from its toxicity, the anti-venom serum in the laboratory would definitely be useless. Tang, will the experiment continue? Bob was a bit hesitant. He turned his gaze to Tang Song. The intelligence of this snake, as well as the intensity of its venom, has clearly surpassed that of ordinary snakes. If genetic recombination is successful, what kind of monster would it be? Continue. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Flying Snake and Goo. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Flying Snake and Goo. Oh my god, Tang, what have we cultivated? This kind of creature is simply perfect. Bob leaned in front of the observation window, looking almost obsessively at the experimental subjects in the cultivation room. In the cultivation room of over 10 square meters, the water mist is hazy, and a black shadow shuttles through the air, occasionally flashing with electric light in the mist. Bob frantically pressed the switch, and in the laboratory, the strong wind from the blower quickly dissipated the mist, revealing the black figure. The black snake, as black as ink, has grown from the thickness of chopsticks to the thickness of the thumb. Its fine scales cover its entire body without any scars, and there are occasional flashes of electric light on the scales, which are like ink jade. The most eye-catching feature is the open flesh film on both sides of the black snake's body, with flapping flesh wings. The black snake soars in mid-air like a mythical beast. The flying snake, Bob's eyes were full of fanaticism. It was simply a biological miracle. The only snake in nature that is closely related to flight is the golden snake in the Southeast Asian jungle, which can leap between trees. However, in fact, the golden snake does not actually fly. It just glides between branches, like a flying squirrel. And the black snake in front of me truly relied on its fleshy membrane to fly. Tang! Bob looked at the agile black snake swimming in mid-air and couldn't help but excitedly turn his head to look at Tang Song. Bob had just turned his head when he saw a whirlwind in front of him, and with a thud, he fell heavily to the ground. The black and gray spiritual light swayed at the fingertips of the Tang and Song dynasties, like a candle. Small enchanting technique, one of the non-mainstream small techniques in Xiuxian Road originally. It was a non-mainstream spell used by some of the lower and lower classes to confuse good families. Unfortunately, in this world, the enchanting spell used by a little flower picker also consumed some of the essence of the Tang and Song dynasties. In the land of the end of the Dharma, Tang and Song felt the loss of essence in their bodies, sighed secretly, extinguished the spiritual light on their fingertips, grabbed Bob's back collar, picked him up, and placed him on a nearby resting chair. What about the land of the last law? It seems that I have taken the right path. Tang and Song looked at the black snake, which looked like a mythical Ting snake, but their hearts were filled with excitement. His idea is indeed correct. Technology and immortality can be combined, and this goo has become. Goo, according to legend, takes 100 insects into a vessel, allows them to devour each other, and finally eliminates all competitors. The one who survives is Gu, which is considered a mysterious Eastern legend in the scientific community. The black snake cultivated by the Tang and Song dynasties is actually a true Gu insect, and its cultivation method comes from the mysterious 100,000 mountains, which is an undisclosed secret of a sect. The 100,000 mountains do not refer to the Yungue mountains and rivers of the Eastern Kingdom, but to the 100,000 mountains in the world of Yanfu. Yes, in the world of Yanfu, Tang and Song were not people of this world, but rather unlucky individuals affected by a dispute. The world of Yanfu is a world of advanced cultivation, where the great power of practitioners belongs to themselves. When practicing at a high level, they can pick stars and moon, live forever, and even activate earth fire and feng shui to recreate heaven and earth. According to the scientific perspective of this universe, it is the ability to restart the universe. However, this is not a big deal. In the legendary world of Yanfu, the 10 ancestors of the Tao sect and the 5 emperors of the demon sect achieved the Tao fruit and transcended the realm of Yanfu. Of course, this realm is beyond the imagination of ordinary people like the Tang and Song dynasties. He was originally just a wandering soul from another world, but by chance, he threw himself into a dying Sanshio body. The called scattered cultivation refers to cultivators without backgrounds, backers, or sections. In scattered cultivation, there is not a lack of strong and powerful cultivation abilities. Like the 9 ancestors of the ancestors, they are all great masters in the world of Yanfu, and even the Buddhist and Taoist families must give way 3 times. As for the person possessed by the Tang and Song dynasties, even if they were barely strong, they could still master 2 or 3 techniques, which were stronger than ordinary people, but their strength was also limited. For 2 years, Tang and Song relied on a few small spells to mingle in the mortal world, but also became wealthy officials. Having purchased a large family property and married 3 or 4 concubines, life is quite enjoyable. However, there is still some unwillingness, and he also wants to find an opportunity to join a major sect of cultivation and find a way to achieve immortality. Unfortunately, the person he reincarnated has no qualifications, and no lucky fate. Some slightly famous sects didn't even look up to him, and in the Tang and Song dynasties, they were disheartened and planned to lay flat. While wandering around in the mortal world, an accident happened. The sky has collapsed. The consequences of a clash between two great experts are no longer an adjective. The whole heaven and earth really split into several pieces, and the entire world of Yen Fu seemed like soybeans falling onto a grinding wheel, crushed and crushed, transforming into a complete chaotic energy. As for Tang and Song, he didn't feel anything, so there was nothing left. He opened his eyes and saw the ceiling of an apartment in Brooklyn. World imprint. This is the lowest and most fundamental substance in the world. There are spiritual beings in the world, and from the very beginning, there has been an imprint imprinted on the origin of the world. The reason why great supernatural beings are not afraid of destroying the world is that they can intercept these imprints from the origin of heaven and earth, reopen heaven and earth, and restore the world to its original state. As for the Tang and Song dynasties, he was an unlucky foreigner who had no information about the origin of Yen Fu's world and was directly expelled from the country. The good news is that Tang and Song actually gained some benefits when the world of Yen Fu reopened. Some spiritual knowledge imprinted in the world. When people leave their names behind and geese leave their voices behind, as the entire world of Yen Fu restarts, some knowledge imprinted in the most secretive parts of heaven and earth is fully revealed before the Tang and Song dynasties. The true teachings of the Tianhe Sword sect include the Tianhe True Dharma, the secret teachings of the Demon sect include the Heishui True Dharma, the Tianping Zongheng True Dharma, the Taoist sect's Huangting Neijing True Scripture, and the Buddhist sect's Samsara True Scripture. The method of refining gu in the Tang and Song dynasties originated from the Heishan Jing of Heishan Dao, and the founder of this Heishan Dao sect was one of the 9 ancestors of the other sect, Jia Zhu. Tang and Song controlled the computer, and the wall on one side of the cultivation chamber slowly moved towards both sides. Almost as a gap opened in the wall, a black shadow flew out like lightning, rushing towards Tang and Song. Naughty! Tang and Song's eyes flickered, and a blue spiritual light flew out between their fingers. The blue spiritual light met the black shadow, and the ripples like water waves flickered in the spiritual light, eventually transforming into a worm-shaped rune and imprinting it on the head of the black snake. Pushi. Seeing the rushing Jun-1, a hint of spirituality flashed through the cold pupils of the black snake, and its flesh membrane flapped. It was necessary to avoid this Jun-1. Unfortunately, before it could turn its direction, layers of blue light appeared on the surface of the black snake's scales, along with this Jun-1. The body of the black snake suddenly stiffened, and the blue Jun-1 sank directly into its head. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Experimental Forces Field. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Experimental Forces Field. Hiss. Bob felt dizzy and heavy in his head, like the feeling after waking up from a hangover. He shook his head, lifted his head, and saw a middle-aged man with one arm in a white coat busy with his back in front of the experimental platform. Professor. Bob stood up unsteadily and greeted the man in front of him. Bob, you and Don did a good experiment. This lizard's regeneration ability has increased by 30%. I will approve your experimental report. Professor Connors lay in front of a high-power microscope, observing the cell slide without looking back. Tang has something to do and went back early. You should also go back and rest early. Lizards, regenerative ability. Bob feels dizzy and his head is heavy. Did they succeed in the experiment? Is it a lizard? A faint black shadow flashed through Bob's mind, but it was fleeting. Okay, Professor. Bob instinctively responded and walked out. Strangely, this lizard's regenerative ability did indeed surpass its peers, but its cell division speed did not meet expectations. Dr. Connors ignored Bob and focused on lying in front of the microscope, replacing 3 or 4 cell slides in a row, but the data he obtained surprised him a bit. Connors was once a talented military doctor who was recruited into the military during a federal foreign war and sent to the front line to perform surgical procedures on wounded soldiers. One day, The base was attacked by the enemy, and he suffered irreparable damage to his right hand in a big explosion. In order to save his life, he chose to amputate and was sent back to the federal hospital for recuperation. From then on, he conducted experiments in university, gave up surgery, and began to desperately study the regenerative system of reptiles and various reptile biology. In order to restore his severed arm and create human regenerated limbs for medical purposes, he has been researching how to transfer the genetic characteristics of lizard regenerated tails to humans. Studying such projects naturally requires funding, and it is impossible to rely solely on research funding from universities. This is also the reason why Professor Connors works at the Osborne Group. He is good friends with Norman Osborne, the president of the Osborne Group. As the owner of the Osborne Group, Norman Osborne is well aware of how vast the financial landscape would be if this technology could truly be developed. Therefore, he invited Connors to become the chief researcher of the Osborne Group, providing full financial support for Connors' research. Strange. Professor Connors was typing on the keyboard and conducting simulation calculations on the computer. According to the Cell Division Index, the regenerative ability of this lizard could not be so fast. Professor Connors became increasingly strange as he thought about it. After a moment of thought, he clicked on the camera recording in the laboratory, logged in to his own permissions, and wanted to see the experimental process of Tang Song and Bob. She. Just as Professor Connors clicked on the recording, the host that stored the experimental video suddenly burst into flames. Connors was so frightened that he leaned back and fell heavily to the ground, making a loud bang. Poo-poo. Professor Connors awkwardly got up from the ground and the burning engine emitted thick black smoke, triggering the smoke alarm and activating the sprinkler system. Professor Connors, what happened? Looking at Professor Connors, who had been drenched in soup, and the badly burned computer host, the security director of the Osborne building, who arrived upon hearing the news, asked. Professor Connors took a towel from the nearby security guard and wiped his messy wet hair, looking a bit confused. Perhaps due to circuit aging, this computer host suddenly experienced spontaneous combustion. Circuit aging. The security director frowned and said, Professor, does this host have important experimental data in its memory? The director of security felt a jolt in his heart. It is important to know that Osborne Group's important research projects often use internal networks for confidentiality purposes, and data is stored on hard drives instead of network storage. If important research data is lost, the director of security will frown. That's not true, Professor Connors shook his head. The hard drive of the burned host contains some experimental videos, and the specific experimental data has already been stored and archived. Upon hearing that there were no important data, the chief security officer breathed a sigh of relief. As the security officer in charge of the Osborne building, if there were a major accident, whether it was an accident or human error, he could not escape the responsibility. The spontaneous combustion caused by aging of a circuit only results in the loss of a computer, and he can still suppress this matter. Tang, what do you want to conceal? In a more radiant laboratory, the burnt-out computer had been carried away, and Professor Connors sat on an office chair, looking at the lizard lying motionless in the cultivation room, somewhat lost in thought. The computer in the laboratory has just been replaced for less than half a year, and there is a dedicated person to maintain it every once in a while. It is impossible for the circuit to age unless someone tampers with it. Thinking that he had just wanted to view the experimental video when the host spontaneously ignited and the lizard with completely unscientific self-healing ability, Professor Connors had a vague guess in his mind. A block away from the Osborne building, at a corner, a black Rolls-Royce extended car quietly parked on the roadside. Wearing a plaid shirt and carrying a backpack, Tang Song walked calmly to the front of the car. A tall and sturdy white man with a height of 2 meters, dressed in a straight tailcoat, wearing snow-white silk gloves, and a short silver plate on his head, stood solemnly at the car door. Seeing Tang Song approaching, he quickly opened the car door, respectfully took the backpack from Tang Song's hand, waited on Tang Song to get into the car, put the backpack into the trunk, got into the car, and closed the door. In the driver's seat, Kane quickly started the car and drove away. In the spacious carriage, besides Tang Song the white man who opened the door, there was also a young woman with a delicate face and slightly messy brown long hair. Her upper body was a denim jacket, and her lower body was a pair of white jeans with holes, attentively tapping on her tablet. Seeing Tang Song sitting in, the woman turned off her computer and turned her head to ask. "Boss, everything okay? How was the experiment done?" Her long brown hair and delicate face exude a distinct oriental beauty, revealing a hint of mixed-race charm. Tang Song easily took the cocktail offered by the white man, took a sip, and sincerely praised, "Ryan, you are the best bartender in the world." Regardless of the implicit pride displayed by the white man, Tang and Song opened their palms and revealed a black jade ring on their thumb. "Osborne's laboratory is really good, the experiment was very successful. My path can indeed be paved." The mixed-race girl looked curiously at the jade ring in Tang Song's hand, ready to reach out and touch it. At this moment, the jade finger on the Tang Song thumbs suddenly moved, and a sound of metal leaves shaking rang out. In a rustling sound, the black jade finger spread out and turned into a small black snake. The black snake crawled into the palm of Tang Song's hand, coiled into a small snake formation, with a cold gaze fixed on the mixed-race girl. "Ah!" The mixed-race girl was startled and suddenly shrank back, almost jumping up. The strong white man on the side saw the black snake and was excited all over. His subordinates instinctively touched the pistol at their waist. As a former Special Forces soldier, his sixth sense made him feel a strong sense of death crisis on this small black snake. Tang Song extended their thumbs and nodded at the head of the black snake, then smiled slightly and said, "Don't be afraid, this snake is very obedient." The black snake climbed up along the thumb of Tang Song, circling around his thumb, connected head and tail, and transformed back into a black jade ring. "It's really amazing, boss. You're really not a mutant. Is your ability to control animals?" The mixed-race girl looked curious. Tang Song gently stroked Mo's finger and chuckled, "Mutants, their abilities are all unique. In our hometown's words, it is the heavens who reward food. The heavens in this world are not very friendly to me, and my abilities are obtained through cultivation. God is God." The mixed-race girl rubbed her eyes, and the word "God" clearly went beyond her understanding. "Practice, it's like being a magician, it sounds so cool. However, boss, for mutants, their abilities are not a gift from God. For most people, this is a curse from demons. After all, in the eyes of outsiders, they have always been seen as monsters." As a computer expert and a member of the Hacker Wave organization, Sky naturally knows many things that the federal government deliberately conceals. There are also news about mutants being discriminated against and even used for experiments. "Sky, if mutants possess superpowers and are monsters, then what about God? In the Bible, he is described as omniscient and omnipotent. What is he, a super monster?" Tang Song asked in response. The mixed-race girl Sky felt a bit stuttered for a moment, and after a while, she murmured softly, "Isn't that different?" Tang Song smiled, with a glint of ambition in their eyes. "The only difference is strength. A mutant with omniscient and omnipotent strength can also be offered to the altar." Sky turned his head to look at Tang Song, his delicate face full of exploration and curiosity. She is not a Catholic, and when it comes to her boss's blasphemous remarks, she feels a bit stimulated. Sky doesn't know much about her own boss. A year ago, while replenishing supplies for her RV, she encountered a sudden €0 purchase. Coincidentally, at that time, Tang and Song were inquiring about purchasing Cinnabar in the Chinese-owned store. Naturally, the two black gunmen were directly taken care of by Kane, who was following Tang and Song, one by one. In order to avoid trouble, during the process of handling the body, Tang and Song had someone invite Si Kai to sit as a guest for a few days. Shockwave Woman, which Tang Song remembered after learning that Sky was a computer hacker and combining her name, seems to have the superpower to create shockwaves after awakening. However, compared to her mutant ability, Tang Song is more concerned about her other identity. A computer hacker. Having traveled through this world for over 2 years, the Tang and Song dynasties had already gained a general understanding of its vast and complex worldview. A world that blends marvel and mutants, with a mix of dark powers such as werewolves, vampires, and wizards. In the Tang and Song dynasties, if one wants to practice, they naturally cannot avoid the 4 essential elements of cultivation. The Dharma couple, wealth, and land. It took 2 years for the Tang and Song dynasties to establish a small force of their own. A computer hacker with good technology and huge development potential was naturally useful for the Tang and Song dynasties. A confused girl who is in an economic crisis and dedicated to finding her own identity, having weaknesses, recruiting was not a difficult task for the Tang and Song dynasties. Are there any interesting news lately? Tang and Song shook their glasses and turned their gaze to the tablet in Sky's hand. Sky, who was staring at the face of Tang and Song with some confusion, quickly withdrew his gaze and said, "Yes, there were a few. The Mutant Brotherhood attacked an organization against the mutants. It is said that military personnel came out and killed several key members of the Mutant Brotherhood." Sky clicked on the tablet screen and brought up segments of video images. In the video, you can see a person with different skin colors, each displaying their abilities, dealing with fully armed federal soldiers. These people can either spray water or manipulate sand, stones, and trees, looking extremely supernatural, but compared to fully armed federal soldiers, their resistance is indeed somewhat powerless. In the video, a mutant who can control sand and stones wraps a thick layer of sand and stone armor around his body, hoping to break through the encirclement of the army. In fact, bullets couldn't break his armor, but with a loud bang, RPG went straight into his soul. Amidst the dust and dust, the Mutant Brotherhood of scattered soldiers was quickly massacred while the army was using heavy weapons. The Mutant Brotherhood, Tang Song watched as the mutated individuals displayed superpowers in the video, all of which were non-powerful mutated individuals. The few powerful mutants he knew in his memory did not show up. To be honest, the Tang and Song dynasties were quite curious about them. Especially for the Omega-level mutants in comics, their abilities are described to the extreme and even comparable to some top-level supernatural spells. Even more so, it is not inferior to the top-notch protective magic of some great supernatural beings. It can even control time and space, but of course, the amount of moisture involved is subjective. As Tang and Song played with their wine glasses, they suddenly remembered a method of refining magical tools from the Hashan Road. I just don't know if the mutated ability of these individuals is based on genetics or soul level. It can be studied that during the Tang and Song dynasties, an evil idea emerged in their hearts, but their face remained calm as usual. They raised their glass and took a sip of wine. I don't know where the Rising Tide organization got some information from. It's about the giant beasts. It's a hidden organization called the Emperor. Sky reopened a video. The noise generated by the rotation of helicopter propellers, in the video footage, fully armed federal soldiers flashed by, all of whom showed fear in their eyes. The video footage is very short, except for the footage taken inside the helicopter, the rest is the overhead perspective. Underneath the sky is a volcanic crater, with lava rolling inside. The figure of a giant beast resembling a winged demon can be vaguely seen. From a high-altitude perspective, the body of this magma giant occupies most of the crater, and its exposed body alone is several tens of meters long. The surface of these bright red shells is wrapped in a thick layer of magma. Rattan. Watching the giant beast image in the video, Tang Song's expression became somewhat solemn. He handed the wine glass to Ryan on the side, took the tablet from Sky's hand, and watched the video twice. That's right, it's indeed Raton, one of the ancient Titan giants, the Imperial Organization, which is Godzilla's worldview. Tang Song put down his computer, rubbed his brows, and thought of the giant beast that could weigh tens of thousands of tons and grow hundreds of meters in length. Even Tang Song felt a headache. You should know that in Godzilla's worldview, the three-headed dragon Ghidorah truly possesses the ability to destroy the world. The storm generated by flying this thing can directly tear open the stratosphere and easily destroy a city. Mia Ba, San Tu Long Ji Duo La, Ao Chuang, Tang Song gave Ji Duo La a beating in his heart, although there was a tall one standing against him when the sky fell. But for Tang Song himself, this was not a cinema, he could stand out and watch others beat him to death. Now he is a character in the drama, but he has no habit of entrusting his own safety to others. Self-strength is still a hard truth, but unfortunately, the speed of improving strength is still a bit slow. Tang Song sighed in his heart and pressed the call button on the front desk, saying, "Kane, please take Sekai back first. I'll go inside the venue and take a look." Kane, who was driving, nodded silently. The car stopped on a relatively remote street in Brooklyn, New York. Tang Song slowly got off the car and stood at the entrance of a bar called Gun Gun Rose. The car went straight around to the underground garage behind it. At this moment, Tang Song, who had changed into a white suit, walked into the door and was greeted by more than a dozen black men with wide smiles on their faces. They flattered and said, "Boss, everything is fine today and there is nothing wrong." Tang Song nodded in satisfaction and walked into the brightly lit bar. A heavy metal band was writhing wildly on stage, making noise, while more than a dozen blonde and blue-eyed beauties were trembling wildly around them. In the middle of the dance floor, countless young people were tightly clinging to each other and twitching. Occasionally, there were a few screams coming from the semi-enclosed private rooms around, but something immediately covered their mouths. Several gay men walked towards the handsome man with a smile, but were immediately punched and flew away by the black man next to Tang Song. A few vendors who were doing some kind of unspeakable business smirked and gestured to Tang and Song, quickly shipping and collecting money in their hands, greeting and doing business at the same time. I thought it was a single player, thank you, bloody elegy brother, end of this chapter. Chapter 6. Scavenger. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Scavenger. Tang Song and Kane Ryan walked into a small door behind the bar. What is guarding here is not a black man like the one at the door, but a Germanic white man with light blue eyes, golden hair, and a resolute face. After a narrow passage of about 10 meters, there was a small room with several sofas and 2 billiards tables arranged in a row. More than 10 white men were focused on playing billiards. When they saw Tang Song enter, they quickly stood at attention and saluted him. Tang Song nodded and touched a corner of the small room, then flashed into a secret door. A few more steps revealed a spacious secret room, with luxurious decorations reminiscent of the palaces of Middle Eastern kingdoms. A tall and terrifyingly muscular man who was comparable to Kane, dressed in a skull shirt, was sitting on a corner sofa fiddling with his pistol. When Tang Song entered, he simply nodded coldly and immediately focused all his attention on the weapon in his hand. Tang Song looked at Frank, who was focused on cleaning his gun, and there was no surprise in his reaction. Walking to the nearby sofa and sitting down, Ryan took out a box of cigars from a nearby cabinet, took out one, trimmed it with cigar tongs, and slowly baked it with a match. Tang Song leaned against the sofa, smoking the top-quality Cohiba cigar baked by Ryan. Kane opened a crystal bottle of whiskey on the table and poured a glass of whiskey. "Boss, the cleaning work has been stabilizing recently, and the accounts for the first half of the year have been settled at the mainland hotel, the money from Jean he has also been received, and the accounts from the Hand Union and Black Belt have been urged. It will be received within 3 days, and we have earned a total of $23 million in cleaning expenses in the first half of the year." Ryan held an account book and reported the profit situation to Tang Song. "Adding bars and several other businesses, we currently have $47 million on our books. What's going on at the police station? Tang Song swallowed the smoke and asked, have you packed everything up yet? It's normal at the FBI, the share for this month has already been given to them, Ryan said as he closed his books. $47 million is still a bit short. In 6 months, $40.7 million is an unimaginable number for ordinary people, but for truly wealthy people, it is not even a fraction of a private plane. The Tang and Song dynasties placed cigars on ashtrays, picked up wine glasses on the table, and shook the liquid. The light of the crystal chandelier shines on the wine glass, and the wine bubbles emit a brilliant rainbow of light. Cleaning expenses were profits generated from a small business operated during the Tang and Song dynasties. In New York, there are many deaths every year, both normal and abnormal. Some of these people died from illness, some died from accidents, some died from murder, some died from gang conflicts, and some died from dark forces that could never be disclosed. It goes without saying that those who died from illness and accidents, but those who died from murder and gang fire, for the city government, police station, and gang, their bodies need to be properly handled. This gave birth to a profession. A scavenger. 2 years ago, there were several groups of people working as scavengers in New York, including Kinmen in South Korea, the processing department of mainland hotels, the Japanese Hand Club, and several gangs with varying degrees of involvement. 2 years later, only Tang from the East remained as a scavenger in New York. Professionalism and cleanliness are the evaluations of the Tang and Song dynasties by industry insiders. Any business they take over has never had any future troubles, which is a good thing for both the FBI and the gangs of all sizes in New York. The murder cases at the New York Police Department have dropped to their lowest level in 10 years in the past 2 years. Because no body was found, the Gang Fire Union allows for a bold and reassuring fight, and all they need to pay is some insignificant aftermath costs. Of course, a team of over 20 former German special forces was the decisive factor for the Tang and Song dynasties to stand firm in New York. Even Jean did not want to provoke the group of Tang and Song, mainly because the gains and efforts were completely disproportionate. In this situation, the scavengers of the underground forces in New York were assumed to be members of the Tang and Song dynasties. Kane, please contact our bishop to see if there are any new tasks. Let Frank take those kids out for activities, otherwise the famous Punishers will rust. Punisher Frank Castor wiped the Mi-6 assault rifle in his hand, and upon hearing Tang Song's words, he simply nodded at him. Yes, boss. After explaining the matter, Tang and Song walked towards the elevator in the corner of the room. Under the elevator, there is a huge void, a dim environment, an isolated platform, and the surroundings are pitch black. Only at the top of the head are scattered silver stars like starlight. Qingshe Terrace is adorned with numerous eerie talismans painted in cinnabar. Around the stone platform, there are displayed vertical coffins with black lacquer and gold characters for blessings and longevity. With the silver light shining down, one can vaguely see a series of eerie corpses listed inside the semi-open vertical coffin. Pop. A sound of switches opening and closing rang out, and several huge lighting lights lit up. The huge void instantly lit up like daylight. Coffin, talisman, corpse, still. But there is no longer the eerie atmosphere of the past. Stepping out of the elevator, Tang and Song arrived at the table in front of the altar, took off the black jade trigger, and took out a pair of sterile gloves to wear. A blue stone altar measuring 10 zhang in length and width, forming a huge 8 trigrams shape as a whole. Qian, Dui, Li, Zhen, Sun, Kan, Zhen, Kuan, for golden coffins of blessings and longevity are erected at the edges of each direction. There are a total of 30.6 coffins, each with a body filled with talismans painted with vermilion liquid. On the upper layer of the hollow rock, the silver light emitted by silver crystals scattered down, reflecting on these 30.6 coffins. The vermilion charm emitted a strange blood-red light, and something like blood faintly flowed into the coffins. Woo-woo-woo-woo, the 2-meter-tall gray-haired werewolf, who was originally bloodthirsty, only had fear left in its pupils. He looked at the Asian young man holding a long nail in front of him, trying to make a sound and begging for mercy, but his vocal cords were completely uncontrollable. Tang and Song stood calmly in front of a vertical coffin, accurately inserting coffins into the werewolf's body in front of them. The coffin nails from the east come from different years and materials, but the shortest one buried in the soil has a history of 200 years. These coffin nails buried in the soil have been stained with the aura of earth and corpse for hundreds of years. Although it may not be considered a magical tool, it is also a top-quality artifact for raising corpses. Coffin nails pierced into the werewolf's body one by one, but no blood flowed out. Instead, the werewolf's body gradually hardened, and a wave of corpse evil energy spread all over the werewolf's body with each coffin nail. Refining corpses is one of the 70.2 methods recorded in the Xiuxian classic. Find a yin acupoint on an ordinary corpse, bury it, and it will not rot for 20 years. It can absorb yin acupoint evil energy and transform zombies. In Xiuxian Road, there is a method of raising and refining corpses. Zombies are fed with human blood and sacrificed using the method of refining tools to obtain protective armor corpses. Armored corpses are divided into 4 classes based on their severity: gold, silver, copper, and iron. Among them, golden armored corpses are the most powerful, even able to compete with some major repairs of lower grade Dan. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Cultivation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Cultivation. The night in Brooklyn is particularly quiet, unlike the bustling neighborhood next door. In the kitchen of hell, night represents danger for ordinary people. The neon lights of the Gun Rose bar flicker, and the noisy sound of heavy metal music faintly spreads. On the rooftop of the bar, 6 tabletop-sized optical focusing mirrors were aimed at the bright moon hanging in mid-air. The moonlight was gathered together by these mirrors, transforming into a beam of silver light projected into an underground cavity. 36 black lacquer longevity golden coffins are erected and distributed around the 8 trigrams platform, with hollow upper layers. Silver crystals refract the moonlight from the outside and gather to reflect on the coffins. The coffin is surrounded by bloodsucker blood mixed with cinnabar as ink, and a blood-colored talisman is drawn to inject a continuous stream of Tai-yin energy into the armored corpse inside the coffin. A armored corpse forms a pattern of worshipping the moon and worshipping the celestial body, absorbing these lunar flowers and transforming them into the energy of the corpse's evil within the body. The skin color of their bodies turns one by one green-black, as if cast in iron. After quenching, the blue-green moonlight flowed out from the 30.6 armored corpses, which was the purest moonlight power extracted from the energy of Tai-yin. The 8 trigrams altar lit up with blue rays of light, and the moonlight essence merged into the Tai Chi Yin fish inside the 8 trigrams altar. During the Tang and Song dynasties, he sat cross-legged on top of the Tai Chi Yin fish, with a blue jade pussy carved from a piece of jade. The essence of the moon blossom permeates the body and acupoints of the Tang and Song dynasties, refining their limbs and bones. Yen Fu world divides cultivation into 9 realms. Practice Qi, build foundation, concentrate Sha, refine Gang, achieve Dan, Yuan Ing, Yuan Shen. Pure Yang. Practicing Qi refers to introducing the essence of heaven and earth into the acupoints of the body, penetrating the heaven and earth, and refining the entire body. A continuous stream of Tai-yin Yuhua essence converges into the Tang and Song dynasties along the blue jade. During the Tang and Song dynasties, every breath could drive the movement of organs throughout the body, with 84,000 pores flowing together, spraying thin and swallowing, forming a continuous breath. Close your eyes and explore the interior of your body with your spirit, feeling the subtleties. The Tang and Song dynasties can now clearly see the clusters of meridians, blood vessels, viscera, and fascia inside the body. With a slight movement, the whole person feels like a large ball of lead and mercury. Lifting hands and feet all round and turn smoothly, and the skin bag is filled with heavy mercury, a heavy texture. Listening attentively, the sound of qi and blood moving and the flow of essence is like the tinkling of a spring in the mountains and the murmuring of a small stream. At the same time, in his mind, the 8 extraordinary meridians and 12 orthodox meridians were all reflected. On each meridian, each acupoint was like a string of silver threads and beads, seemingly complex but possessing its own mysteries. It was arranged horizontally and vertically, densely packed, like the stars in the sky, corresponding one by one. Since practicing the Tianhe true Dharma, obtained from the imprint of Yen Fu's world origin, the Tang and Song dynasties had already unblocked Ren Du's 2 meridians, and most of his meridians were successfully cleared by his inner family's essence. At this time, with just a slight effort, he stirred the elixir field. Suddenly, wherever his essence reached, the acupoints at the Guanqiao acupoints lit up like lamps, one after another. The sound of peristalsis in the large intestine and small intestine, as well as in the 5 organs and 6 viscera, is like the roar of a frog or a cow. After reaching this point, one can freely mobilize the power of the 5 internal organs and operate biochemistry, which is countless times more flexible than before. Subsequently, Tang and Song separately felt their lungs, swallowing a mouthful of essence. In an instant, they seemed to only see a white light flickering and swallowing in their left and right chests, wandering between large and small alveoli, concentrating in calming their qi. They were connected to the elixir field, and a faint purple gas gradually emitted and sent into their hearts and lungs. The 2 white lights clanged and rushed into the middle of their mouths and noses, instantly transforming into 2 thin white gases of their little thumbs, stretching and contracting like a spirit snake spitting out a message. The center of the 5 organs is dominated by fire, while the lungs are dominated by gold. Taoism emphasizes refining medicine and seeking elixirs. In fact, all of these are achieved through the sacrifice of heart fire. However, I have combined the techniques of Tianhe sword immortals, using fire to refine gold, eliminating waste and retaining essence, to obtain these 2 lung qi. However, they are the true Tai by essence qi, which is collected in the body and said to be stronger and stronger. When released, they are the legendary sword qi, which can most effectively cut off all strong things in the world, much sharper than any divine weapon or sharp blade. Feeling the subtle changes in the 5 internal organs within oneself, with only a slight movement of the body shape, the essence and qi in the body follow the trend and operate on their own, from the inside out and from the outside in, all forming one entity. In this moment, Tang and Song immediately knew that their cultivation had finally entered a state of qi cultivation tonight. Before practicing qi, although there is only a thin line between practicing qi and practicing qi, there is a vast expanse of land and clouds between the two, with only the window paper that pierces through this layer. The Tang and Song dynasties truly entered the realm of cultivation. You should know that he has been struggling to seek enlightenment in the world of Yen Fu for several years, but he has only entered the door of qi cultivation. In the era of the end of the Dharma, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth did not exist, but the Great Way was 50, and the heavens extended 4 or 9, and people fled one of them. There is no absolute in everything. After 2 years of testing during the Tang and Song dynasties, although this world lacks the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, it does not lack the essence of the sun and moon, and is filled with stars. If we really want to make use of it, it is no less than an ordinary Taoist paradise. It's just that the sun spirit fire is not something that ordinary people can withstand. Even if it is the essence of the Tai Yin, the Tang and Song dynasties had to go through layers of filtration before daring to absorb and utilize it. After all, the world is different, the sun and the moon are different, but the essence of the sun's Tai Yin has many deviations. These 30.6 armored corpses were used by the Tang and Song dynasties as filters to remove impurities from the essence of the Tai Yin. The Tang and Song dynasties utilized the most advanced spectral capture instrument, combined with 30.6 armored corpses, to create a feng shui bureau where celestial corpses worship the moon. However, the concentration of Tai Yin essence in this underground space was no less than that of some ordinary mountains, rivers, and earth veins in the Yen Fu world. If nothing unexpected happens, the Tang and Song dynasties will continue to cultivate like this, and in the next 100 years, he will be able to try to collect and refine the qi of Gang Sha, and try to form pills. At that time, he was successful in getting pills. Taoism called him a human immortal, and Buddhism called him a arhat. He was able to get through the body without losing his power. He appeared in 6 stages, shining all around, not lifting his external kidney, and closing his yang pass. It was normal to live 700 or 800 years old. And the 2 strands of white essence that he had just condensed between his lungs were also precious and extraordinary. Over time, as he continued to warm up, these 2 strands of essence would also become stronger and stronger. One day in the future, the Tang and Song dynasties wanted to try practicing the sword immortal flying sword. He had these 2 Tai Bai essences in his hands, which were 100 times easier than others. He just needed to find a high-quality sword embryo, mix it with Tai Bai's essence, and after 100 days of warm cultivation, he could immediately practice a true sword weapon. In the world of Yen Fu, from ancient times to the present, many Taoist hermits have been busy gathering medicine, breaking down hardware, seeking elites, practicing qi and meditation in order to sacrifice and refine a flying sword, hiding deep in the mountains. In the end, some even use their own blood to water sword tools and embark on evil paths, just to refine a flying sword. Like the Tang and Song dynasties, those who have not yet practiced swordsmanship but have yet refined the golden qi in both lungs and condensed the Tai Bai essence, dare not even think about it in casual cultivation. And this is also the knowledge that the Tang and Song dynasties gained from the root imprint of the Yen Fu world, which is the true teachings of the Tianhe sword sect in the Yen Fu world and the secret that is not passed down. The reason why the Tang and Song dynasties were able to easily obtain it in the world's imprint is that one of the 2 great supernatural beings who fought at the beginning was a certain ancestor of the Tianhe sword sect. In the 2 years since the Tang and Song dynasties arrived in the Marvel world, there was no one who called it slackening or practicing the moon. From the outside to the inside, they first cleared the skin, fur, muscles, and bones, and then from the inside to the outside, they forged the bones and opened the meridians. Now, following the guidance of Taoist teachings described in the Tianhe True Dharma, they have followed the same path, accumulated knowledge, and finally entered the realm of qi cultivation. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Killer Scavenger. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Killer Scavenger, Boss. Ryan, who saw Tang Song walking out of the secret door and sitting on the sofa wiping his wine utensils, quickly got up. Ryan, you're here yourself. Where are Kane and Frank? Tang Song, dressed in loose white casual clothes, casually walked to the sofa and sat down, raising his hand to signal Ryan to sit down. Boss, a large order has been sent from the mainland hotel, and Kane and Frank have taken people out. Big order. Tang Song rubbed the black jade ring on his thumb, gesturing for Ryan to continue. Someone violated the regulations of mainland hotels and killed someone at the mainland hotel. The mainland hotel posted a reward overnight, and many assassins in New York were mobilized. Who killed someone at a mainland hotel? Upon hearing Ryan's words, Tang Song became interested. Mainland hotels are truly behemoths in the underground world. Mainland hotels distributed around the world are the most famous hideout for assassins in the underground world, and the location for bounty missions. The 12 elders on the high platform table behind them represent the top underground forces of one side. As far as the Tang and Song dynasties know, Jin, known as the underground emperor of the Federation, was just one of them. The alliance nature of mainland hotels has led many organizational forces to enjoy posting rewards in mainland hotels. Mainland hotels do not have a clear stance, but they have their own rules, one of which is not to kill people inside the hotel. In the underground world, no one dares to touch this rule of mainland hotels. Because once violated, it means facing endless pursuit from mainland hotels and the forces behind it. John Wick. Tang and Song retrieved this name from their long-lost memories, and then he received confirmation from Ryan. The plot of Rapid Pursuit, also known as a bloody case triggered by a dog. A cliché story of a retired assassin who was robbed of his beloved car and killed his beloved dog left behind by his deceased wife. The guy who was avenged was the only son of a Russian gang leader. After the incident, he hid directly in a mainland hotel, hoping to use the rules of the mainland hotel to survive. But he was directly beaten to death by John Wick inside the hotel. Ryan, may I ask who the unlucky gangster is? Tang Song rubbed the thumb of the black jade ring and said, let's see which part of the business he's involved in. John Wick. I want to kill him, just for one dog, he actually killed my son. In a mansion in New York, Vigo, whose eyes were bloodshot, held a bottle of vodka and drank it with a flushed face. He held the wine bottle with a slightly white joint in his hand, clearly exerting all his strength. As Russia's largest arms broker in New York and a prominent gangster, he was unable to protect his biological son. John Wick, John Wick, John Wick. Vigo muttered the name, his words filled with resentment, but a hint of fear flashed beneath his fierce face. A dog, just because of a dog, John Wick, this crazy person. Damn it, where did it go? On a street in Brooklyn, a black sedan stopped. Several white men cursed as they got off the car, openly carrying the M11 miniature submachine gun in their hands, without any concern that someone might have noticed them. Just walked out less than 2 meters, a drunken man with a strong smell of alcohol walked over from the opposite side of the street, holding a woman with exposed clothes. Suddenly, he pointed at one of the big men and smiled, "Hey, what are you doing? Are you a gang smuggling drugs?" 7 submachine guns opened the safety at the same time, and the leading man coldly said to the drunk, "Get out of here if you don't want to die." The drunken man pushed the woman forward fiercely, pushed her to the feet of the big men, and let out a scream. Then he slowly approached the leading big man and said with a chuckle, "What? If I don't leave, will you shoot and kill me? You dare to try shooting?" The leading man was shocked to find that the drunk's eyes were so clear and filled with a strong murderous aura. He opened his mouth and was about to scream, but it was already too late. The drunken man swung his right hand fiercely, and a sharp special dagger slipped off his sleeve, cutting through the man's neck. His left hand wrapped around the man's body. In an instant, the drunken man had transformed into a cold killer, his eyes emitting a cold murderous aura. Puff. Raising his hand, the dagger turned into a cold light and flew out, directly entering the throat of a big man. The remaining 5 big men lifted their guns, but they forgot about the woman on the ground. The woman twisted like a snake a few times, and her body was soft and boneless, with several remnants. Her poisonous fingernails gently brushed through the neck arteries of the 4 big men, and then she sizzled and lightly licked a trace of blood on her fingertips. The assassins of mainland hotels are getting worse and worse every generation. John, you really shouldn't have retired. The woman smiled coquettishly, and her pupils suddenly turned into reptile-like erect pupils, hissing. John Wick silently checked the firearm in his hand as he watched the woman's forked red tongue speak. As a legendary assassin of mainland hotels, John Wick is also renowned in the underground world. Although facing the powerful mainland hotels, many of his old friends choose to stay safe. But it's not that no one is standing by his side, like a snake woman. Bina, don't rely too much on your abilities. Mainland hotels are not without mutant assassins. John Wick pressed each specially made brass bullet into the magazine, clicked, loaded the bullet, turned the muzzle, and turned the handle towards the snake woman. Take it. The snake woman took the gun from John Wick's hand and lightly brushed her finger against his palm. However, seeing John Wick's expressionless and cold poker face, she could only sigh lightly in her heart. John Wick faced the seductive snake woman in front of him, without any hint of pity, suddenly turned around and aimed his 2 guns at the back alley. Come out. The snake woman reacted and quickly raised her gun, aiming it at the back alley. In the shadow of the back alley, a tall figure stood quietly. "Don't worry, we're just here to deal with the body. If you don't mind, it's best for you to leave this place as soon as possible." "I'm in a hurry." John Wick's hands were steady, his two guns aimed steadily at the tall figure speaking, and his tone was somewhat puzzled as he said. "Scavenger. When did your speed get so fast?" "It's none of your business." The tall figure in the shadow's voice was cold. 30 seconds, leave this place." John Wick took a deep glance at the tall figure and ran towards another alley with a snake woman who looked dissatisfied. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Arms Violence. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Arms Violence. Ryan, prepare the car, go to the Osborne building first, and then go to the office. The oak-long table was filled with various Chinese dishes, and Tang and Song casually ate a few baskets of shrimp dumplings without washing them, instructing Ryan. "I didn't use the white Rolls-Royce, but instead used a black Mercedes-Benz and drove towards Manhattan." Ryan spoke in a low voice in the car. "Boss, it's clear that the leader of the gang being attacked is named Vigo. His gang mainly deals in arms, and currently 1/3 of the firearms in the underground world of New York come from his gang, and he has a smuggling route responsible for smuggling weapons to Mexico. 1/3 of the military share. It looks like it makes a lot of money," Tang Song muttered to himself. He looked up and asked Ryan, "Have you found out? Who is the banker behind Vigo? How profitable is the federal arms business? Let's put it this way. When the federal government declared war on Japan, it allocated $280 billion, and arms dealers earned $176.4 billion, of which the cost of weapons accounted for only 37%, and the profits of arms dealers were as high as 63%. The federal arms dealers earned $1.07 trillion in 2 wars against the Middle East and Iraq. In the battle against Afghanistan, federal arms dealers earned $1.26 trillion. The federation belongs to the Capital Federation, and the interest groups formed by arms dealers can greatly influence the direction of the federation. However, the federal arms market is currently approaching saturation. At present, the share of high-precision weapons in the federation is controlled by the Stark Group. Thanks to a genius boss who excels in weapon refinement, even the masters of the Ministry of Defense cannot spot any flaws in Stark Industries' weapons. In this regard, few people have competed with Stark Industries. The market share of mid to low-end weapons in the Federation is not lacking in crocodiles competing for food. Thor, Loma, Hammer. You should know that although federal military spending reaches billions every year, being divided among these large and small arms companies leaves only some soup and water. Any arms broker or dealer must have the support of one or more arms companies behind them. 1/3 of the weapon supply in the underground world of New York is not much, but it is definitely not a small fraction, plus the amount smuggled into Mexico. Tang and Song want to know who the supporters behind this Vigo are. "Boss, I can't find out, I only know that Vigo sells Soviet-made weapons in the underground world. Many of them are weapons from the Cold War era." Soviet-made weapons. Tang and Song lightly flicked their fingers in front of the glass window, turning their heads to look at the street view outside. The arms business is very profitable. At dawn, 2 military pickup trucks were parked on the roadside, and several black men skillfully carried corpses onto the trucks, washing the bloodstains on the ground with specially formulated pharmaceutical solutions. 5 black people cooperated harmoniously, with clear division of labor and skilled movements. 7 corpses were cleared in just 3 minutes. Soon, the street floor was as clean as a wash. As the 2 pickup trucks drove away, Kane finally emerged from the shadows. His bounty is a whopping 4 million, don't keep him. Beside Kane, the heavily armed Punisher played with a catapult knife. The blade of this catapult knife can be ejected to harm enemies, and in Frank's hands, its killing power within 10 meters is no less than that of firearms. A sharp straight knife with a silver coating on the blade. Frank sharpened his nails with a straight blade and asked Kane without lifting his head. Kane frowned and said, "The boss has no orders, don't make any claims." Behind the 20 Germanic giants stood in 4 rows. Each person wears an LBV tactical vest, with 3 layers of high-strength fiber woven bulletproof armor that is as black as ink on the joints of the limbs. The armor surface is also coated with PVD titanium coating, which can effectively prevent scratches left by knife and axe chopping. In addition, each soldier wears an integrated pig nose-shaped gas mask under their fast Kevlar tactical helmet, and wireless communication earphones are suspended on the left side of the helmet through the NVG mounting slot. The window of the helmet is equipped with the N/PVS.21 night vision system produced by Federal Sensor Technology Systems, which is the top-tier binocular night vision system on the market. It is equipped with dual IR lighting and a variable focus telescope, and can be connected to the HUD display of the SCAR rifle sight in the soldier's hand. It has gyroscopic and electronic map reality functions. Secondly, these soldiers were wearing belts with 1 Mk3A2 attack grenade, 1 M8 smoke grenade, and 1 M7290 flash grenade each. They also had a Siege Thor 9mm pistol, and even had an M9 multifunctional bayonet hanging from the outside of their tactical boots. In short, this is a special operations team consisting of 20 elite soldiers armed to the teeth, capable of rapid armed infiltration with logistics in place, and performing kidnapping, assassination, and rescue missions with precision like a surgical knife. Exquisite, efficient, and with a high cost and potential benefits, it doesn't seem like a mafia's move. Using them to deal with the mafia can be said to be a complete waste of talent, killing chickens with a knife. Buzzing Kane felt the vibration in his pocket, took out a military satellite phone, and connected it. "Hello, boss, yes, good. I understand. Who is the goal this time?" Punisher Frank shrugged his shoulders, pressing the spring of the catapult knife in his hand, and the crisp sound of the blade unsheathed kept coming. "Vigo." Kane said coldly, "A Russian gang leader, the boss wants to live. Live." Frank frowned and said, "Why didn't you kill those scumbags?" Kane was a bit angry and slapped Frank hard on the shoulder. He said in a deep voice, "Don't question the boss's decision, Frank." Frank snorted and retracted the catapult blade, putting it back in his pocket. "Vigo, give it to you. I'll take care of those vampires." For the Punisher Frank, he always believed in using evil to overcome evil. Frank has never had a good impression of gangsters. If it weren't for the boss, his wife and children would have died in the grudges of those scumbags. Although Frank did not experience the pain of losing his loved ones due to Tang Song's intervention, he still dealt harshly with gangsters. The reputation of the Punisher still resounds in the underground world, but this time the Punisher is no longer fighting alone. Tang's Import and Export Trading Company is located in the 4th District of Manhattan, mainly engaged in the import and export trade of metal ores. The company's business scope is very extensive, including copper iron ore, non-ferrous metals, and various waste metal materials. The company's business is not limited to the federal government. Within just 1 year of its establishment, its business has spread to various countries, and several well-known large-scale ore producing areas in Asia and Europe have their leaders. The main business of the company on the surface is to buy low and sell high, making a profit difference between different countries. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Hardware Ghost Hunting. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Hardware Ghost Hunting. In front of a public warehouse in Manhattan, 2 employees opened the door with keys. As the huge rolling shutter door slowly rose, sunlight shone into the interior, shining brightly with golden light. In the warehouse of Tang's Trading Company, boxes of copper and iron ingots are neatly arranged. According to your instructions, this warehouse currently stores 500 tons of copper ingots, 1,000 tons of iron ingots, 20 tons of tin, and 1,000 kilograms of silver. Tang and Song walked ahead, inspecting the situation of the warehouse, occasionally squatting down, lifting the lid of the box, and checking the quality of the copper and iron ingots inside the box. A chubby white warehouse keeper fell half a step behind and whispered to Tang Song about the metal storage situation in the warehouse. Ryan followed Tang and Song with several German white men with bulging waists. "Well done." Tang Song circled the warehouse and patted the white manager on the shoulder. The white warehouse keeper's body trembled, beads of sweat sliding off his greasy white face. His gaze swept over the bulging back of Ryan and the others, and the sweat on his face increased. God bless him, when he learned that the owner of this warehouse was of Asian descent, he had some ideas about the goods inside, but he didn't find a suitable buyer for a while, so he didn't take action. Now looking at the posture of this Asian, it is obvious that it is not easy to provoke. Tomorrow, I will find someone to transport this batch of goods and complete the handover. Tang Song kindly glanced at the white warehouse manager. The emotions of the white warehouse manager, who was so nervous that his heart was about to jump, could not be concealed from his spiritual sense. As for the reason, Tang and Song didn't want to know, but if this batch of metal ingots had any tricks, he didn't mind throwing the chubby white man into the furnace together. "Ryan, how did the person I asked you to find do?" On the Mercedes-Benz, Tang Song took out 2 cans of cold beer from the car's small refrigerator and handed one to Ryan sitting in the passenger seat. "Boss, we found 2 people." Ryan turned around and took the iced beer from Tang Song's hand, saying, "One is a swordsmith from the east. It's said that his family has been swordsmith for generations, and the other is a 4-time champion of the blade forging conference, Dolly Ben." Swordsmith, champion of the blade forging competition, Tang and Song drank cold beer without hesitation. "Give them my drawings and have them craft 2 swords within 10 days. I want to see the finished product." "Yes. Boss." The federal living environment is mostly community-based, with clear distinctions between the rich and poor, and between white and black people. There are 5 districts in New York, including the Bronx, Brooklyn, Manhattan, Queens, and Staten. Among the 5 major regions, there are also many small communities, and Hell's Kitchen is one of them. The official name of Hell's Kitchen is actually Clinton District, named after the 6th governor of New York, Dwight Clinton. This used to be one of the most prosperous areas in the catering industry in New York, but the true source of hellish kitchens has little to do with kitchens or restaurants. This is the most famous slum in New York, with a high crime rate and frequent gang fights, giving birth to many criminals and gang leaders. The people living in this community are the lowest level of the federal community, many of whom have no jobs and rely on receiving federal aid for a living. As the most chaotic neighborhood, with gangs, drug dealers, and black people, almost all the unstable factors gather here. No normal person wants to live here, but there is no other way. The pressure of life and the high housing costs from the outside world force people to bow their heads. The chaotic living environment forces ordinary people living here to learn self-protection. It goes without saying that every household has guns, and many people gather together to keep warm, forming night security teams and patrolling their own buildings with guns. The caliber is justice. In this situation, not only drug addicts and petty thieves, but also some gangsters dare not easily break into these communities. But it was in this situation that several terrifying exterminations occurred in a white community. Firstly, the old Ellie family was discovered to have died tragically at home. Ellie was lying horizontally in the living room, his body separated, and before his death, he tightly held onto his cherished Winchester double-barreled shotgun. Unfortunately, this love gun clearly did not protect his life. When his twin daughters were discovered, they were in the bedroom, with their necks bitten and flesh blurred. Their entire bodies were drained of blood, resulting in 2 dehydrated corpses. The people in the community reported to the police as quickly as possible and organized retired soldiers in the community to increase patrols. But to no avail, murders occurred one after another in several communities, and the victims had young women in their homes. When these women were found, they were all drained of blood and turned from fresh lives into corpses. The terrifying emotions quickly spread within the community, even though the police defined this case as a twisted serial killer. No one believes it. This is not done by people, it is a consensus among more and more people. Many people choose to move out of the community, especially families with young girls. A luxurious estate in Manhattan, although it is daytime, the dark windows here completely block the sunlight. Silver candlesticks fill every corner of the hall, under crystal chandeliers, the candlelight is dreamy, and a pair of perfectly handsome men and women sing and dance in the hall. Pale-faced waiters shuttle around the dance floor holding plates, occasionally handing glasses of bright red blood wine to the passionate dancers on the dance floor. In a corner of the dance floor, Selena, dressed in a black leather coat, leaned against the wall with her arms in a somewhat out of place, staring coldly at her extravagant peers in the hall. She had reported the intelligence of the werewolf, but strangely, there was no response from the members of the family. As the family's consul in New York, Clavin did not take any preventive measures. Selena is a bit confused about Craven's thoughts. Selena, at this moment, a tall and thin man in a tailcoat walked up to Selena with a glass of blood wine. Selena clearly saw that his pale face was even coated with powder like a woman. She was somewhat disgusted, but at the same time, she didn't understand why Cleven had fallen so quickly. Is power really so corrosive to people's hearts? You should know that many years ago, Craven was also a death walker who could slay the Wolf King. Craven, we need to talk about it. Werewolves are definitely planning big moves, and their UV bullets are clearly targeting us. We need to take countermeasures. Alright, Selena, this is just a scattered soldier of the werewolves. The werewolves in New York have already been cleared up that year. If you don't want to attend the ball, you can take your team to deal with the problem. Craven interrupted Selena's words in anger and casually threw a stack of photos to her. A group of rural guys broke into Manhattan, wanting to use this area as their hunting ground. Selena, find them, drive them out of New York, and do a pretty job. I don't want to provoke the group of ascetics and those damn demon hunters from the Vatican. Selena lowered her head and looked at the photos in her hand. In the messy scene, there were corpses, clearly all of which were the works of her peers. New York, an emerging city that has developed for less than 200 years, everything here has been divided, even in the dark world. The entire New York bloodline can be said to have only two major families. One is them, whose bloodline originated from the ancient Hungarian nobles, Alexander Kovinas. Another is a secret party family from Europe, whose leader is Dickon Firth. An ambitious person, this is the description of Dickon by many big shots in the underground world. New York has always been a hunting ground for the two major bloodline families, but in just 200 years, human technology has become increasingly advanced, and these once towering vampires have been further compressed into their living space, shrinking into darkness. In order to avoid human strangulation, the two major families controlled the number of blood descendants and attracted a large number of powerful Hagui clan to provide cover for them through the temptation of longevity. Despite this, these mutants are becoming more cautious in the face of increasingly powerful humans, just like their own, which has developed for 200 years and has its own hospitals and sufficient blood bank supplies in various districts of New York. Although Dickon's secret party is rough in their actions, they are also extremely careful in their hunting. Their hunting targets are mostly outsiders and homeless people. No matter how many of these people go missing, they will not attract the attention of human society. And this kind of hunting targeting ordinary people, especially so brazen, is definitely done by those wandering families. These disgusting guys act recklessly and prey recklessly, causing panic in human society and attracting the attention of special human departments. They slapped their buttocks and left, and by then, this black pot will not be borne by these local families. Selena watched as Craven walked to the dance floor and hugged a beautiful girl dancing. She put the photo in her pocket and left the hall on her own. On the rooftop of a community building, the cold wind is howling, and below, there is silence, with two police cars parked at the entrance of the community faintly visible. Frank sat on the steel railing at the edge of the rooftop, gazing through an infrared telescope at the closed window. A small group of Special Forces soldiers, fully armed, stood behind Frank. End of this chapter.